Just as my mother-in-law was heading over to the couple to retrieve the Tupperware, my father-in-law suddenly collapsed, tumbling out of his chair. Everyone's attention immediately shifted to him. He clutched his stomach, clearly in significant pain. "What's wrong?" someone asked, concern etched on their face. Amidst the commotion, my father-in-law managed to utter something that took me by surprise. "I only had a little bit of food from the kitchen. Why is my stomach suddenly upset?" I caught my mother-in-law's response. "Did you eat some of that?" I'm Elizabeth, a 20-year-old housewife. My husband Vernon and I married last year. Being the same age, our conversations and values align perfectly, which has made our relationship harmonious. Our love has only deepened since we got married. However, there was one aspect that unsettled me slightly when we first got married. During our visit to my in-laws to offer our wedding greetings, I noticed my mother-in-law's rather traditional perspective. "When you get married, you come to live with us, right?" she had asked as though it were a given. My husband and I responded in unison. "What?" We both had no intention of living with his parents. My husband clarified, "No, we plan to live independently, just the two of us." My mother-in-law's reaction was one of shock. "What? But you're the eldest son." Both my husband and I were taken aback and uncomfortable with her response. Sensing the tension, my father-in-law interjected, "That's an old-fashioned way of thinking. Do whatever you want, Elizabeth and Vernon." While that seemed to settle the matter for the moment, another issue loomed, worsening the atmosphere. Neither my husband nor I had planned a wedding ceremony. We preferred to avoid anything too extravagant and had discussed using the money for travel and other experiences instead. When I informed my parents about our decision, my mother-in-law's face turned a shade of green. "How can you not have a wedding?" My mother-in-law's voice was filled with disbelief. As I mentioned before, she was quite traditional and strongly opposed our decision to skip a wedding. "How will we explain to our relatives that the eldest son isn't having a wedding?" she demanded. To her, the eldest son's wedding was a significant event, and she couldn't accept any deviation from her beliefs. Fortunately, my father-in-law came to our rescue. "None of the relatives really care about the wedding," he said. "They just see it as a chance for a nice meal. In time, they'll forget there wasn't a wedding. If you two decide against it, that's perfectly fine." His understanding and respect for our wishes were a relief, sparing us from having to conform to my mother-in-law's traditional expectations. Despite her disappointment, we went ahead with our plans. We married without a ceremony and began living independently. I embraced my role as a housewife, supporting my husband by handling the daily household tasks. I find joy in preparing lunch and dinner for him, and our life together has been fulfilling and happy. I think it will be even more enjoyable when we have children someday. About 2 months after our marriage, my parents-in-law invited us to visit. Given the previous disagreements with my mother-in-law, we were a bit apprehensive. However, since we hadn't been to their house since our wedding, we decided it was time to go. I braced myself for any lingering hostility from my mother-in-law, but to my surprise, she was nothing but welcoming. "If you have any questions about being a housewife, don't hesitate to ask me," she offered. "I have all kinds of recipes and would be happy to share everything I know." My mother-in-law, who loves cooking, often hosts gatherings for the neighbors. She proudly mentioned that her home parties are quite popular and that she holds them regularly. On this visit, I enjoyed a delicious home-cooked meal prepared by her. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law were incredibly kind, and I felt reassured. My worries about the past disagreements melted away, and I realized I didn't need to be anxious anymore. I felt reassured, and my husband felt the same way. He believed that visiting his parents occasionally would be no problem. About 3 months later, my in-laws invited us to a dinner party at their house. Given the warm experience we had during our last visit, we were eager to go. When we arrived, my mother-in-law served a meal that looked like it belonged in a high-end restaurant. My husband praised her cooking enthusiastically. "You're getting better and better," he said. "You didn't make anything like this when I was a kid. This dish is fantastic. Thank you for preparing such amazing food." My mother-in-law beamed with pride at his compliments and encouraged me to eat as much as I wanted. I enjoyed the evening, but later that night, I began to experience a severe stomachache. As I sat in the bathroom, I started to feel faint and weak. "Hey Elizabeth, are you okay?" My husband's voice seemed to fade as I struggled to stay conscious. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Apparently, my husband had called an ambulance and I was rushed to the hospital. The doctor couldn't determine the cause of my illness. They ruled out food poisoning and other common issues. The only suspicion I had was that the pasta I had for lunch might have had too much olive oil. I never did find out what caused my illness. After being put on an IV drip and getting some much-needed rest, I felt better. My husband and I went home and went to bed, puzzled by the whole experience. For a while, I was symptom-free, but 2 months later, it happened again. I suddenly felt unwell, and once again, it followed a meal at my in-laws' house. The only common factor was my mother-in-law's cooking. I wondered if her food was somehow spoiled, but my husband, who had eaten the same meal, was perfectly fine. A month later, the same thing happened after another dinner at my in-laws. Concerned, I invited a friend over for lunch to discuss what might be causing this recurring issue. Could it be stress? She suggested. Her comment made me a bit anxious. I had always tried to be trusting and open-minded, but perhaps I had developed some nervousness around my mother-in-law. Plus, getting sick every time we visited her house was becoming a troubling pattern. My husband shared my concern. He suggested we should take a break from visiting my parents-in-law for a while. Though we didn't know the exact cause, it seemed clear that my symptoms were consistently linked to meals at my in-laws' house. My husband speculated that it might be related to my mother-in-law's cooking. I began to wonder if that might be the case. Afterward, my mother-in-law reached out several times, inviting us for dinner. My husband consistently declined the invitations, keeping my health in mind. However, we received another invitation for a dinner party that we couldn't easily refuse. My brother-in-law and his wife were coming to my in-laws' house to offer their wedding greetings. Although I was a bit anxious, as I had been feeling better by avoiding my in-laws' house, my husband assured me that I didn't need to eat much if I wasn't up for it. I decided to try to limit my intake as much as possible. On the day of the party, my mother-in-law greeted me with her usual warmth. As long as we engaged in conversation, I felt fine. Maybe it really was something wrong with the food. Later, my brother-in-law and his wife arrived and we had a pleasant chat. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law expertly prepared the dishes and the table began to fill with an array of beautifully presented and delicious-looking food. Despite the appealing presentation and the fact that the food I had sampled so far tasted great, I still couldn't understand why I kept getting sick. As soon as we sat down, my mother-in-law encouraged me to try the food. "Elizabeth, you mentioned you liked this dish, didn't you? I made it especially delicious today, so please try it." I felt uncertain about what to do. Just then, my husband interjected, "Elizabeth isn't feeling her best today, so let her eat what she can manage." My mother-in-law responded with a nonchalant, "Well." My mother-in-law set a small plate with a modest serving in front of me and asked, "This amount should be fine, right?" I was unsure of what to do when my brother-in-law spoke up. "Elizabeth, if you're not feeling well, you don't have to force yourself," he said. "I've already greeted you, so if you're feeling sick, don't hesitate to go home and rest." It turned out my husband had informed his brother and sister-in-law about my situation, and they were both aware of what was happening. Their concern was comforting. Seeing that she couldn't insist I eat, my mother-in-law said, "Well then, I'll pack it up in a Tupperware for you to take home." I was puzzled by her insistence, but I figured if I took it home, I wouldn't have to eat it anyway. I gratefully accepted, saying, "Okay, thank you very much." Just as my mother-in-law went to get the Tupperware, my father-in-law suddenly collapsed and fell from his chair. Everyone turned to see him clutching his stomach in apparent agony. "What's wrong with you?" someone asked. He hadn't even touched the food on the table yet. "What in the world is going on?" My father-in-law then said something that took us by surprise. "I just had a little bit of food from the kitchen. Why is my stomach suddenly upset?" I heard my mother-in-law's anxious response, "Did you eat some of that?" Without hesitation, my husband called for an ambulance. My mother-in-law accompanied my father-in-law to the hospital, leaving us in a state of shock at their house. I kept thinking about her earlier comment and realized that my brother-in-law's wife might have experienced something similar. "We should investigate the kitchen," I suggested, suspecting there might be a hidden issue. We went to the kitchen, where my mother-in-law had been preparing the food, and found something alarming. We immediately drove to the hospital where my father-in-law had been taken. At the reception desk, we learned which room he was in and went straight there. As we entered, we heard the doctor asking my mother-in-law if she had any idea what was wrong with her husband. She claimed she knew nothing about it. When we walked into the room, my mother-in-law looked flustered. "Oh, you all came here," she said, trying to dismiss our concerns. "It's all right. As long as I'm here, everything will be fine." But we were determined not to let this opportunity slip by. "I need to talk to you," I said firmly, walking up to her with my husband, brother-in-law, and his wife following. "What is wrong with you all?" I demanded. My father-in-law's condition had stabilized somewhat, and his complexion looked better, but the cause of his distress was still unknown. Apparently, he had been conscious for a while after arriving at the hospital. But after multiple trips to the bathroom, he became severely dehydrated and lost consciousness. I looked my mother-in-law straight in the eye, took something out of my bag, and held it up for her to see. When she saw it, her face turned pale. "Do you recognize this?" I asked. "Did he? Well, what is it?" she stammered, feigning ignorance. "This is a laxative," I said. I couldn't understand why there were so many powdered laxatives in the kitchen. My mother-in-law fell silent at my discovery. The doctor, examining the situation, said, "It appears your father-in-law's symptoms were caused by ingesting a large amount of laxative. We'll run some tests to confirm. If we find evidence of laxatives, we'll need to ask him when he ingested them. If he doesn't know, it means someone else intentionally administered them, which could lead to charges of injury." My mother-in-law's face went pale with panic. "No, it's not like that," she stammered. "I didn't try to make him eat that food. It was just negligence." My husband, visibly upset, pressed her. "Then who were you trying to feed this to?" "It's not." My mother-in-law began to protest, but her voice faltered. "If you won't tell us, we'll have to involve the police and have them investigate," my husband said firmly. Realizing she had no other option, my mother-in-law confessed, "All right, I'll tell you. It was meant for Elizabeth. I intended to punish her by putting laxatives in her meal." "Punish me? What did I ever do to deserve this?" I asked, bewildered. "You're the reason my son has become a bad son," she said bitterly. "You didn't live with us, and you didn't have a wedding. It's all because of you persuading him to make these decisions. You're my enemy." Her resentment seemed unfounded and unjustified. My husband and I looked at each other, appalled. "Is this why you've been putting laxatives in the food I've been eating?" I asked. "It wasn't a lot of laxatives before," my mother-in-law insisted, trying to minimize her actions. "That's why you were fine." "Don't be ridiculous," I retorted. I was rushed to the emergency room. "How can you claim it wasn't a lot?" My husband and brother-in-law echoed my frustration, condemning her actions. "I can't forgive you for what you did to Elizabeth," my husband said angrily. "I'd be furious too if it were my future wife being treated like this." Both my husband and brother-in-law declared that they were disarming my mother-in-law. Her face contorted with fear and desperation as she begged them not to say such things. My father-in-law, who had been semi-conscious throughout the conversation, finally spoke up. "You've done a terrible thing out of ego. You should be arrested by the police. I'm deeply disappointed in you." "But even if you say that, you're not divorcing me, are you?" my mother-in-law pleaded. "That's not enough," my father-in-law continued. "You're going to pay Elizabeth $30,000 in damages, and of course you'll need to work for it. I won't be helping you in any way." "No, that's impossible," she cried. "I've been a stay-at-home mom all my life." "Shut up," my father-in-law cut her off. "If you don't accept these terms, I'll divorce you immediately and report you to the police." With no other options, my mother-in-law reluctantly agreed. She began working hard to pay me the $30,000, slowly making payments as she worked through her obligations. My father-in-law keeps a close watch on my mother-in-law to ensure she doesn't try to cheat. All of her salary is being used to pay the damages she owes me, and she looks quite overwhelmed. However, I believe she deserves it for the pain she caused. Meanwhile, my husband and I are living happily. Both my father-in-law and husband assured me that I don't have to see my mother-in-law again, which has brought me a great sense of relief. I know I've been through a lot, but with the support of my husband and father-in-law, I feel confident that I'll be okay no matter what happens. It's shocking to think that feeding someone food laced with laxatives is a criminal act. It seems extreme for a mother-in-law to act so maliciously without hesitation. I often wonder how my father-in-law ended up married to someone like her, though it seems the two sons turned out to be decent individuals. Although the truth of her character remains unclear, the punishment she is receiving feels appropriate. I hope she works hard to repay the $30,000 and that my husband and I continue to live happily ever after. My name is Tammy, a 39-year-old professional employed in the sales department of a trading company. From my college days, I've been drawn to leadership roles, adept at rallying people together. Presently, I oversee a team of subordinates, rivaling the seasoned male counterparts in sales achievements. I take immense pride in the unwavering support I receive from my female colleagues, bolstering my role as a dependable manager. Yet, returning home to my apartment after a taxing day, I find no one awaiting my arrival. Having parted ways with my husband of 17 years and chosen to live separately from my 15-year-old daughter, I now dwell in a freshly rented apartment, surrounded by yet-to-be unpacked boxes. Despite the chaos, I harbor no regrets. This marks the commencement of a fresh chapter in my life. Let me delve into why I've embarked on this new journey. In the past, I resided in an apartment alongside my husband, Bob, and our daughter, Rebecca. Bob, a former college classmate turned spouse, and I tied the knot after reconnecting post-graduation and dating for 2 years. Initially employed in the sales department of a printing company, Bob transitioned into a self-employed web designer, operating from the comforts of our home. Our daughter, Rebecca, is currently navigating her way through 8th grade. The initial warning came in the form of a shift in Rebecca's demeanor. I asked for the moisturizing cream, Dad. Oh, my bad, sweetie. I completely forgot. I'll pick it up tomorrow after work, I promise. You're so useless. Can't you do anything right? Rebecca began casting colder glances my way, her words growing sharper with each passing day. Initially, I attributed it to her teenage years, dismissing it as a phase. Dad, want to catch a movie with me on your day off? Sure thing, kiddo. What's showing? Previously, Bob would always include me in such plans, but now it seemed he had no reservations about excluding me. Hey, can I have some money? We're going to the movies this weekend, remember? $300 should cover it. $300. Seems a bit steep. Can't you just use your debit card? Just get it done. I'll need cash for shopping and dining out too. Gradually, even Bob's treatment of me soared. Our interactions dwindled, leaving me feeling increasingly isolated. Then came that Sunday, a day etched in memory, when both Bob and Rebecca voiced their dissatisfaction with the breakfast I prepared. What's this? I've told you I want my eggs over easy. Get it right. And this soup is terrible. I've mentioned my dislike for mushrooms countless times, but you still include them. Can't you say something to her, Bob? Why should I? You can't even follow simple instructions. You're the adult here. The chill in their words left me unsettled. Something wasn't right. I needed answers, but by the time I realized it, it was too late. One week, upon discovering Bob's intention to venture out, I resolved to discreetly trail him. Bob's typical routine revolved around his home-based work. There were no scheduled appointments at the barber or the doctor, so why this sudden outing? Suspicion gnawed at me. Regrettably, my suspicions were confirmed. In the cafe awaited a young woman, a woman in her 20s, possessing a striking physique. As they departed the establishment, arm in arm, my head spun, rendering me unable to pursue them. The dreaded day I had long feared had arrived. My apprehension stemmed from a lack of confidence in my own appearance. I always harbored the fear that Bob might stray due to my perceived shortcomings in looks. While Bob exuded undeniable handsomeness, I often questioned why he had chosen me. Subsequently, I enlisted the services of a private investigator to delve into Bob's relationship with the woman. Your husband's paramour is a 26-year-old named Sofia Garcia, employed at a cosmetic surgery clinic. Among the photographic evidence presented by the detective, some were too explicit for me to bear directly. They depicted open displays of affection, hotel entrances, and disturbingly, there were images featuring a certain third party. And here's another. This one shows the three of them, including Rebecca. What could this possibly mean? So, it seems your daughter is involved as well. It appears that your husband's relationship with Sofia has the approval of Rebecca. I was speechless. A profound sense of isolation and abandonment washed over me. What had I done to deserve this? Suppressing the urge to cry, I mustered the strength to request the detective to also record conversations between Bob and Rebecca. Several times each month, they would coax money from me for their movie outings and shopping sprees. I was convinced that amidst their casual conversations, there must be indisputable evidence. Days later, as I listened to the audio recording provided by the detective, I was rendered speechless. She's so annoying. Can't even do the simplest things right, then tries to act like she's your mom. Why don't you just leave her? Sophie has been waiting patiently, hasn't she? Speaking of which, Rebecca, I think it's too early to talk about divorce. That's ridiculous. Sophie has been waiting, hasn't she? I've discussed it with Sophia. I can't stand being around that ugly woman. Same here, but she's the one bringing in more money. So, you understand, right? Is that a yes? I wasn't sure. Yeah, that's the plan. If I rush into a divorce, I'll lose access to that money. We need to proceed cautiously, withdraw as much as we can, then let Sophia move in. Exactly. I'll need to gauge if Sophia can handle that lifestyle, and if not, I'll have to persuade her. But I think she'll be fine. She's so accommodating. Beautiful women just have a different way about them, you know? Yeah, I get it. I regret it deeply. Marrying that unattractive woman was the biggest mistake of my life. That evening, beneath the scalding spray of the shower, tears streamed down my face. I wept until there were no more tears left to shed, and in that moment, I resolved to take action. Enough was enough. If that was their scheme, then so be it. I refused to be taken advantage of any longer. I vividly recall the arduous weeks that followed. Each day, I buried my emotions and forged ahead with the preparations for my liberation. Even on the day of Rebecca's middle school graduation, my heart remained numb to any profound sentiment. Oh dear, I can't seem to settle on a hairstyle. It's quite vexing. Whose genes sculpted this face? Truly, Rebecca bore an uncanny resemblance to me. Gazing into the mirror, I brushed off her usual snide remarks. Hey, I need some cash. Around $400 should cover it. What else would a kid need $400 for? Besides, it's your graduation today, right? Obviously, I'll be hanging out with friends afterwards and grabbing dinner with Dad. Reluctantly, I handed over the $400, silently declaring it the final time. Rebecca accepted the money without a hint of gratitude. Hey, I'm planning to get plastic surgery soon. Plastic surgery? So you're bidding farewell to this face that supposedly resembles mine. I can hardly wait. A complete makeover before high school kicks off. Okay. Ha, I'm surprised. I expected you to be more opposed to it. What a disappointment. Well, I won't interfere. It's your body, Rebecca. You get what I mean, right? It's only natural to consider plastic surgery with a face like this. It's your fault, she asserted. Later, I drove Bob and Rebecca to middle school. Just before reaching the school, Rebecca requested I stop the car. Dad and I will get off here. You can head home, you know. I don't want my friends to see you, right? Of course, I replied, heading back home. I had no inclination to attend the ceremony. Everything proceeded according to plan, a welcome relief. Upon returning to the apartment, I awaited the arrival of a truck and 3 men. We'll pack and move everything out. With the amount of stuff, it should take about 2 hours. Thank you. I appreciate your assistance. That day marked my relocation to a new apartment, leaving the divorce papers on the table of the old one. I had requested time off from work and spent it touring various domestic destinations, relishing the rare freedom. Though perhaps I could have savored it more without the persistent calls from Bob and Rebecca. A few days later, I returned to the new apartment, refreshed from my journey. After finally picking up one of Bob's incessant calls, he exclaimed, "You finally answered. Where are you? What are you up to?" "Just relaxing in my room, watching TV." "Why the urgency? You sound flustered. Is everything all right?" "What do you mean? Is something wrong?" "What do you mean by your room? Explain yourself properly." "There's nothing." "What do you mean? You saw it, right? The divorce papers." "That's it. No further explanation needed, right?" "So you knew about About what?" "If you mean your affair, I knew. I have no intentions of backing down. I figured, with your income, you can't support Rebecca. Tough luck, I'm filing for divorce and seeking alimony too." "Who says I'm going to pay alimony? We should discuss this matter calmly." "Sure, you can bring Rebecca along or not. It doesn't matter to me." With no desire to continue the conversation, I abruptly ended the call, powered off my phone, and severed all contact. I chose the cab for our discussion, the very same one where I had first seen Bob meeting with Sophia. But this time, only Bob showed up. There was no sign of Rebecca. She must be recovering from her plastic surgery. Poor girl. "Who's that with you?" I inquired. "This is my attorney, Mr. Johnson," Bob replied. "You brought a lawyer?" "Well, did you bring the filled out divorce papers as I asked?" "As I've said, I won't fill out such a thing. I'll tell you as many times as it takes. I have no intention of breaking up." "Do you just want the money?" "I do." "Do you think we can continue our marriage for that reason?" "What? Who said I'm after your money?" "Who said it? You're making assumptions about people's feelings." I nodded at Mr. Johnson, who then took out his smartphone and calmly pressed play. What ensued was a conversation between Bob and Rebecca from that day. Bob's complexion turned ashen instantly. "It's quite an experience to hear your own derogatory remarks played back to you. I don't want to breathe the same air as that ugly woman. If I carelessly break up with her, I won't be able to use the money." Bob's voice echoed through the cafe. No matter how many times I hear those words, they pierce straight through my heart. Knowing that this is his true sentiment sends shivers down my spine. "A recording? What the hell do you think you're doing?" Bob exclaimed. "What am I doing? I think I should be the one asking that. Did you use the money?" "I want to clarify something before we proceed. You have been seeing Sophia, correct?" I asked, studying Bob's expression. "Yes, that's correct," Bob affirmed, nodding. "In that case," Mr. Johnson interjected, "if you have no intentions of divorcing, we will proceed with filing for divorce in family court. We will also discuss the division of assets. The court will examine the circumstances and ascertain the facts to determine whether the divorce is warranted." Mr. Johnson held up a smartphone. "The conversation you had with your daughter earlier is quite significant in this case. In my professional opinion, divorce seems highly likely." "Oh, I see. I came here today to discuss what happens next," I explained, pulling out various documents meticulously prepared for this occasion. "This chart outlines the money I've given you and when, and this document details the utility bill payments." "What? What's all this for?" Bob demanded, clearly taken aback. "And here's a record of withdrawals from our joint account," I continued, presenting another document. "Rebecca's surgery incurred significant expenses, didn't it? Eyelid surgery, eye shape correction, double eyelid surgery, nostril reduction, filtrum reduction, creating tear bags, cheek and nasal bone shaving. The total costs amounted to $40,000. There's only about $20,000 left in savings. We used to have $70,000. You've spent quite a sum, haven't you?" That was for Rebecca. I could replenish the savings. "Do you realize I was the one who primarily contributed to that money?" I could feel my anger rising. "I'm willing to divide what remains in the account for asset distribution. I won't make any claims about the cost of Rebecca's surgery. However, what I do expect you to compensate for is the emotional turmoil I've endured. Keep that in mind. And by the way, have you been in contact with that woman, Sophia?" "No, not really," Bob replied. "That's concerning. I had a private investigator look into her background. Turns out she has a criminal record. You need to watch your back." "A criminal record? What for?" Bob's alarm was palpable. "She was charged with fraud and arrested. It seems she was colluding with the director of another cosmetic surgery clinic." "What in the—" "She must have seen you and Rebecca as easy targets." "My sympathies, and Rebecca's surgery. I hope it went smoothly. If not, we might have to negotiate with the hospital or even consider legal action. We'll need to assess whether the clinic is willing to settle." In cases like this, many clinics refuse to admit fault and become obstinate, Mr. Johnson added, causing Bob's complexion to noticeably pale. "That's all for today. Send the divorce papers to Mr. Johnson. I will be providing my address." "Wait, please, just one more thing. Can you lend me some money?" Bob's plea was pitiful. I can't believe I ever fell for a man like him. "Absolutely not," I stated firmly, leaving the cafe with Mr. Johnson, leaving Bob behind, visibly devastated. Rumors later circulated about Bob and Rebecca's downward spiral. Bob struggled to afford even a modest apartment on his salary alone. To support Rebecca, she had to take up odd jobs like newspaper delivery, and they downsized to a cheaper apartment, compromising their standard of living. Bob's web design projects weren't sufficient, and he resorted to day labor to make ends meet. It was truly pitiful, but Bob had to persevere. After all, he still owed me alimony. I decided to allow him to pay in installments. Paying the full $30,000 upfront would have been impossible for Bob, given his struggling business that barely covered his supplementary income. Taking out a loan was out of the question. I could have suggested borrowing from a loan shark, but I didn't want to subject him to that kind of pressure. A few days later, Rebecca called me. As expected, the surgery was a failure. It was far from what she had hoped for. Rebecca and I met at the cafe, having not seen each other in a long time. She still had bandages on part of her face. The surgery had left noticeable marks, and she would require further procedures to correct them. It was a dire situation. So still no luck reaching that Sophia girl, huh? Yeah, you were spot on, Mom. She saw us as easy targets, Rebecca remarked, gazing out the window with a thoughtful expression. She appeared more mature to me than ever before. Well, I should get going now. Part-time job first and high school homework. My schedule's pretty packed, she explained. Good luck, I wished her. Thanks, Mom, and I'm really sorry for all the trouble I've caused, Rebecca apologized sincerely. No need to suddenly be so polite. I won't be giving you any more money, okay? I won't bring it up again. With a nod, Rebecca left the cafe, marking the beginning of where I am today. I have few regrets. I'm content with my current life. Rebecca is practically independent now, and I hold no lingering feelings for my ex-husband, who had little to offer besides his appearance. I saw him recently in town, covered in dirt, working in construction gear, and a helmet. Did he always have such sorrowful eyes? He looked entirely different. I hardly recognized him. Making a living is challenging, and he deserved to face difficulties after squandering so much money. It's not all about looks. I truly believe that now. I'll continue to do my best just as I am. With the reset button pressed on my life, the future appears brighter than ever before. Get out already, they demanded, their voices cutting through the tense air of the house. Yeah, give us this house already, echoed the demand, leaving Kathy feeling like a stranger in her own home. I can't believe this is happening in my own house, Kathy thought, her heart heavy with disbelief. But if you really want this house, I'll give it to you. Just you wait and see, she resolved silently, steeling herself for what might come next. My name is Kathy Smith. I just turned 60 this year, she reminded herself, drawing on her inner strength. I got divorced when I was young. My ex-husband was a heavy drinker and he used to verbally and physically abuse me, Kathy reflected, her past pains still haunting her. When he started to raise his hand against our children, I served him with divorce papers, she recalled, the memories still vivid in her mind. After that, I single-handedly put our 2 children through college, Kathy continued, pride mingling with the pain of her past. Now, I continue to work in flower arrangements, a job I've always enjoyed, she stated, finding solace in her passion. Also, I've started online lessons a few years ago and have been enjoying the new interactions, Kathy added, a glimmer of excitement in her voice. My eldest son, Max, who has always lived at home, married a woman 2 years older than him, Kathy shared, her thoughts drifting to her family dynamics. I thought that they would move out, but they asked to live with me. Since there was no particular reason to refuse, I agreed to live together. The 3 of us, Kathy recounted, the weight of her decisions evident in her words. My eldest son's wife, Anna, was quiet and not good at housework. She started learning it from me, and I thought she was a good girl, Kathy reminisced, a tinge of disappointment coloring her memories. But now, her initial image is gone, and her true nature is fully exposed in front of me. She talks back and has a foul attitude, but in front of my son she acts like a quiet and good wife, Kathy lamented, the betrayal of trust weighing heavily on her heart. The housework she learned, she only does laundry for her clothes. The rest is left undone, Kathy observed, the reality of her situation sinking in. This is supposed to be the house where I've lived for many years, but somehow I'm treated like an intruder, Kathy confessed, her voice filled with resignation. Yet I am somehow managing to live with these 2 who show no signs of leaving, Kathy acknowledged, her determination shining through the adversity. But little did I know that day would greatly change my life, Kathy reflected, a sense of foreboding creeping into her thoughts. That day, after finishing my online lesson and taking a break, the house was filled with Max's yelling, Kathy recalled, the tension rising with each memory. Hey old hag, we're out of shampoo. I can't wash my hair, she mimicked, the words stinging her ears even now. Despite being in the bathroom, his yelling reached all the way up to my room on the 2nd floor, Kathy remembered, the frustration evident in her tone. He is like this every day, so I'm used to being yelled at by him, Kathy sighed, resignation coloring her words. Not being very quick myself, I went to get the refill shampoo as quickly as I could. Kathy recounted the routine of her days unfolding before her. Here, I'm sorry I didn't notice, she offered, her attempt at peace met with disdain. Too slow. It took too long after I called. Make sure to check time. I'll be careful next time, Max retorted, his words cutting deeper than any insult. Without saying anything, he snatched the refill shampoo from me, Kathy admitted, her hurt palpable in the memory. At that moment, I accidentally cut my palm a little deeper with the refill bag, Kathy confessed, the pain of her physical and emotional wounds intertwined. Complaining here would just add fuel to the fire, Kathy sighed, her resignation evident in her tone. Sighing, I took a bandage out of my first aid kit, Kathy continued, the routine of caring for herself a small comfort in the chaos. Then Anna called out to me, "What, you got hurt? You're so clumsy," Kathy recounted, the sting of Anna's words still fresh in her mind. It's almost dinner time. Isn't the meal ready yet? I'm hungry, Anna demanded, her entitlement grating on Kathy's nerves. Oh, is it that time already? I'll start preparing right away, Kathy responded, her voice strained with the effort of maintaining composure. Would you mind helping out, Anna? Kathy asked, her hope for assistance met with resistance. Ha! Why do I have to cook too? I'm not helping, so hurry up and get it done, Anna retorted, her disdain evident in her tone. When she was about to go, Max got out of the shower, Kathy recalled, the tension between them escalating with each passing moment. He seemed to sense the tension between her and me and interjected, Kathy remembered, the fleeting hope of understanding dashed by his words. Anything happen? Don't tell me you were being nagged by the old hag, Max remarked, his indifference a sharp contrast to Kathy's pain. No, nothing like that. She just asked me to help her with dinner because she got hurt, Kathy explained, her attempts at reason falling on deaf ears. She started talking to him in a sugary voice, completely different from her previous attitude, Kathy noted, the facade of civility crumbling before her eyes. I recognized this routine and resigned myself to what was about to happen, Kathy admitted, the weight of her acceptance crushing her spirit. So she forced you to help. Hey hag, you know Anna can't cook, right? Max accused, his words like daggers aimed at Kathy's heart. Are you kidding me with this? I didn't force her, I just asked if she could help. When she declined, I was going to do it myself, Kathy protested, her voice shaking with frustration. As I was explaining myself, she quickly wrapped her arm around his and began to argue, Kathy recounted, the betrayal of her son's allegiance cutting her deeply. She told me she can't cook because she got hurt her hand. And the reason dinner was late was because she was sleeping, not working, Max defended, his loyalty to Anna blinding him to the truth. Enough. Whether you said it or not doesn't matter now. The fact that you tried to make Anna cook is true. It's your fault, hag, Max accused, his words a final blow to Kathy's hopes for reconciliation. With that, he stormed off to the living room, his back to me, Kathy remembered, the pain of rejection washing over her like a tidal wave. At that moment, she stuck out her tongue in satisfaction as if it was a victory, Kathy recalled, the bitterness of defeat staining her soul. And then followed him to the living room, Kathy concluded, her voice hollow with resignation. He always took her side and never showed any. I caught sight of Max and Anna sprawled on the couch, their casual demeanor interrupted by my presence. Anna, quick to compose herself, straightened up and smoothed her appearance, flashing a fake smile as she greeted our guests. Long time no see, Lily. You look more beautiful than ever, and Jake is handsome as always. Please sit down, she said, motioning for them to take a seat. Anna then gracefully excused herself from the couch and made her way to the kitchen. Once Lily and Jake settled in and started chatting with Max, I quietly followed Anna into the kitchen. There, Anna was busy preparing coffee for everyone except me. As I reached down to grab some snacks from a lower shelf, Anna's demeanor shifted. She leveled a thinly veiled threat at me, accusing me of not informing her about our guest's arrival. I didn't hear anything about them coming over. Are you messing with me? I did let you know, Anna. You just chose to ignore it, making excuses again. You better watch it with that, she warned, her hand poised threateningly. Just as I prepared to shield myself, Lily walked in. Concerned, she offered to help and inquired about the situation. Anna, caught off guard by Lily's presence, quickly retracted her hand and feigned innocence. For the first time, I was taken aback. As Anna was about to hit me, my daughter Lily moved closer to me, positioning herself protectively between us. I recanted, relief flooding over me at Lily's intervention. What on earth was that about? Surely, Anna, you were trying to hit my mother, were you? Lily questioned, her tone incredulous. Of course not. I would never do such a thing. I saw something about to fall from the shelf, and I thought it was dangerous, so I was just trying to help. Wasn't I, mother-in-law? Anna quickly interjected, her voice dripping with false concern. Yes, that's right. You saved me, Anna. Thank you. I'll take care of the rest of the preparations, so please, just relax, I replied, playing along with Anna's charade to diffuse the tension. With that, Anna returned to the living room, her smile unwavering, but her eyes betraying no warmth. Despite her reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling of fear that gripped me. Lily, sensing my distress, offered words of comfort, assuring me of her protection while she was there. And in that moment, her words were a balm to my frayed nerves, soothing the tension from my body. I breathed a sigh of relief when Lily entered the kitchen, breaking the tense atmosphere. If she hadn't, I was certain Anna would have followed through on her threat. Thank you. I feel better now, I managed, mustering a weak smile. Lily, perceptive as ever, saw through my facade. I know you, Mom. You won't tell me even if I ask, but remember this, if you ever need help, don't hesitate to contact me. I'll be there for you anytime. Lily reassured me, her sincerity touching my heart. I nodded in agreement, grateful for her unwavering support. After that, the rest of the day passed peacefully. As night fell, Lily and Jake decided to head home after dinner. Anna offered to help prepare the meal, but Lily insisted she relax, perhaps having witnessed her earlier behavior. With Lily's assistance, dinner preparations went smoothly, and our conversation flowed freely in the kitchen. It was a pleasant change of pace, and for the first time in a while, I genuinely enjoyed myself. Once the meal was ready and we all sat down to eat, my eldest son praised Lily's cooking. This is delicious, Lily. Your cooking is the best, he complimented. Despite my protests, he continued, comparing her cooking favorably to mine. Anna simply smiled and nodded, but Lily and Jake exchanged serious glances. The room fell silent until Lily addressed Max. I think you're misunderstanding something, bro. Mom did all the seasoning, she explained. Max's expression darkened, feeling deceived. Anna's smile wavered, signaling trouble brewing. Just as tension threatened to escalate, Jake intervened, diffusing the situation with understanding. I can totally understand. My mother-in-law's seasoning is similar to Lily's, so it can't be helped, he chimed in, easing the atmosphere. As we finished eating, Jake kept the conversation light with amusing anecdotes, restoring cheerfulness to the room. After Lily and Jake left and the cleanup was done, however, a dreadful incident unfolded. Max's demeanor shifted drastically as he hurled insults at me, reminiscent of my past with my ex-husband. Unlike his demeanor earlier, there was no restraint in his words. Hey, you old hag, you really put me to shame today, he snapped. But I refused to be intimidated. There's no such thing as shame, you know, I replied calmly, refusing to let his insults shake me. I learned that she had invited Lily and Jake over to get back at us. I overheard her and Lily talking. Anna chimed in, accusingly. Anna, Lily, and I didn't talk about such a thing, I protested, but my words fell on deaf ears. Shut up, you old hag. Anna wouldn't lie. Enough with your acting, he snapped, kicking me suddenly. I tumbled to the floor, paralyzed with pain. But his assault didn't stop there. He approached me, kicking me repeatedly as I gasped for breath amid the agony. All the while, Anna watched with a giddy smile. You're always useless, and it makes me sick, he yelled, his words barely registering in my hazy consciousness. Finally, he seemed satisfied and stopped kicking. Seeing my battered state, Anna burst into laughter, her cruelty piercing through me like a knife. Remembering the terrifying days of domestic violence with my ex-husband, tears flowed uncontrollably out of fear. But instead of compassion, their laughter only intensified. What are you crying for? I don't want to see old ladies crying, you know, right, Anna? He mocked, his words cutting deeper with each syllable. With a heavy heart, I realized I needed to leave this place as soon as possible, but my body wouldn't obey. Pack your stuff quickly, old hag. Leave this house today, he demanded, his tone unforgiving. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This house, filled with memories I had gathered over the years, was under my name. I had never even considered leaving. Understand? pack your things within an hour and get out. This is our house from today. Move quickly unless you want to be kicked again," he threatened, his words leaving me no choice but to submit. In agony, I started packing, tears streaming down my face out of frustration, fear for the future, and anger towards them. It was the first time I harbored a deep-seated resentment towards them and vowed to fight back. Once I finished packing, they wasted no time in kicking me out, barely exchanging a word. As I stood on the sidewalk, pondering my next move, the thought of my daughter Lily surfaced in my mind. Hailing the cab, I grasped at straws and headed towards Lily's home. Upon arriving at her house, I noticed the lights were on, and I rang the doorbell. Through the intercom, I heard her voice. When she realized it was me, she quickly opened the door, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. It was only natural. Moments ago, her mother was unharmed, but now I bore bruises, visibly carrying the weight of my ordeal. Lily immediately called for Jake to help carry my baggage, supporting my body as they led me into the house. She assisted me in removing my jacket and gently guided me to the couch. Despite my less than ideal condition, she meticulously assessed the extent of my injuries. Jake fetched a blanket to ensure I stayed warm, his actions reflecting their unwavering care and concern. After evaluating my injuries, which included multiple fractures and a significant bruise on my head, Lily suggested a visit to the hospital for further examination. Initially hesitant, I declined, not wanting to inconvenience them further. However, they insisted, and upon arrival at the hospital, the examination revealed the severity of my injuries. Though fortunately, there were no issues with my head, I was advised to stay for observation. 3 days later, I was discharged and returned to Lily and Jake's home. "I'm really sorry, both of you. I don't know how to apologize for causing you so much trouble," I expressed, overwhelmed with gratitude for their support. "Don't worry about it. We're just glad it wasn't life-threatening," Lily reassured me. "After we're settled in, can we ask what happened?" Reluctant at first, I knew withholding the truth wouldn't suffice, especially considering the severity of my injuries. So, I recounted everything from the verbal abuse to the terrible treatment from Max and Anna since we began living together. Lily listened in silence, her husband also lending his ear from a distance. After I finished my story, I mustered the courage to make a request to the two of them. "I hate to ask, but could I stay here for just a few days? I'll find an apartment that I can move into right away, so it's just until then," I begged tearfully. To my surprise, the response was unexpected. "Mother-in-law, please don't make that face. While you were in the hospital, Anna and I discussed this. We thought we should live together. What do you think?" Lily proposed, catching me off guard. Their suggestion of living together was something I never imagined. Overwhelmed with joy, tears streamed down my face. "Thank you," I said repeatedly, expressing my gratitude. They comforted me until I stopped crying. Afterward, we decided to live together, the three of us. Lily and Jake made a proposal to give Max and Anna a taste of their own medicine for all the terrible things they had done. "But is it okay to do something like that to your own brother?" I questioned. Lily's response was resolute. "I can't forgive those two. I believe they must not be forgiven." Seeing her determination, I agreed to the proposal, entrusting them to handle everything. Around the time the month changed, I received a call from Max. "Hey, we had no idea there was still a mortgage on the house, and now we got a summons to court." "What's going on?" he demanded, his tone accusatory. "I never said there was no mortgage. It's your house now. You should be the one to pay," I replied calmly. Max's response was heated. "You gotta be kidding. We can't afford to pay that much. It's your house, you built it, so you should pay till the end," he argued. Refusing to accept responsibility, I stood my ground. "It was you who kicked me out, so it's not my business," I retorted. Max's threat hung in the air as he abruptly ended the call. Trembling with fear, I realized the gravity of the situation, but believing Lily and Jake were on my side, I managed to calm myself. When I later informed Lily and Jake about the call, they seemed unsurprised. "Mom, just ignore his calls from now on," Lily advised. Following her guidance, I obediently complied. Since then, I've been receiving calls almost every day from Max and Anna, but I steadfastly obey her advice. I continue to ignore the relentless calls. One day, they showed up at Lily's place. I was in the middle of an online lesson at the time and wasn't privy to the initial conversation. After my lesson, as I headed to the living room, I heard familiar voices. Peeking quietly, I saw Max and Anna pleading with Lily and Jake. Please just lend us a little bit of money, they begged. Lily responded sternly, How have you been handling your finances up until now? Weren't you contributing even a bit to your household? Well, we were paying our cell phone bills and insurance, but we never gave any money to my mother, Max admitted. Lily and Jake exchanged stunned looks and let out a sigh. So you're saying that mom was covering all expenses, including utilities and food, and despite that, you treated her like a maid, verbally abused her, and eventually assaulted her and drove her out of her own house. We don't have a single cent to lend to people like you guys, Lily said firmly. What do you mean by verbal abuse and assault? Max hesitated, prompting Jake to step in. I agree with Lily. When we found mother-in-law, she was in a terrible state. She even had to be hospitalized. That's clearly a crime, Jake asserted. At this point, Max grew defensive and attempted to lunge at Lily. I was about to intervene, but Jake swiftly got in between them. Effortlessly restraining Max, Jake maintained control while Lily called the police. Shortly after, the police arrived and took Max and Anna away. Once they were gone, I rushed over to Lily and held her close. I'm glad you're okay. Really glad you didn't get hurt. Jake, thank you for protecting Lily. I expressed my gratitude. They both simply smiled in response, treating me kindly to put me at ease. Later, the evidence gathered by a detective and the lawyer Lily and Jake hired ensured we would receive a substantial amount of punitive damages from Max and Anna. It was then revealed that they had each been having affairs and were in a messy situation. Now, not only did they have financial issues, but they also had marital problems to face. Free from my abusive son and his wife. Once I regained my freedom, I started to heal, venturing outside again with a newfound sense of peace. Despite this, I still received occasional contact from Max, a clear violation of the court-ordered no-contact rule between us. Each time this happened, I promptly contacted my lawyer, who handled it with strict adherence to the law. One day, while at the supermarket, I bumped into our old next-door neighbor, who shared some interesting news. Apparently, Max and Anna were constantly embroiled in arguments about money and infidelity. Anna's true nature had finally come to light, acting as the catalyst for their impending divorce. As a result, they had decided to put their house up for sale. Meanwhile, my private investigator unearthed some revealing findings about Max's downward spiral. His involvement in police matters, lawsuits, and now his divorce had become the talk of his office. His inflated ego led to him quitting his job immediately, and he was dumped by his affair partner. Now, he works part-time and is homeless, spending his nights in parks and abandoned buildings. As for Anna, she had been staying with the man she was having an affair with, but she too was recently dumped. Now, she's seeking work in live-in jobs, attempting to rebuild her life from scratch. Her once beloved hobbies such as nail art and other fashionable activities have been abandoned, and she's now living a humble existence. Meanwhile, I decided to buy back our old house, which had been put up for sale. After some renovations, I now live there with my daughter Lily and her husband Jack. Lily, with her qualifications in aromatherapy and massage, suggested opening a small shop on the spare land we had. We've been managing well, offering physical lessons in the shop, selling items, and running a reservation-based aromatherapy massage service. Returning to our own home brings happiness every day. I am grateful to Lily and Jack, who took care of all the complex issues like private investigators and lawyers, which I found hard to handle. Their support has enabled us to achieve our current lifestyle. I have a wonderful relationship with Lily and Jack, and recently, I received the delightful news that Lily is pregnant. I can't wait to hold my grandchild in my arms. Looking ahead, my life will only become more joyful, and I consider myself very fortunate. I cannot thank them enough.